The bullet tore through Marcus Thompson's arm the same moment he wrapped his body around a stranger's child. Blood splattered across the white tile floor. A little girl in a yellow dress screamed beneath him. And somewhere behind them, a man in a black hoodie disappeared into the panicking crowd. 3 minutes later, her mother arrived, a woman worth more money than Marcus would see in 10 lifetimes. She didn't say thank you. She looked at his worn jeans, his calloused hands, his black skin. And she looked at him like he was the threat. What happened next will change how you see everything. Before we continue, drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what comes next. The gunshot cracked through Riverside Mall at 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus Thompson heard it before anyone else recognized what it was. Most people froze. Some looked around, confused, thinking maybe a car had backfired in the parking garage, or a kid had popped a balloon somewhere near the food court. Marcus knew better. 14 years in the Marine Corps had taught him exactly what a 9mm handgun sounded like when it discharged indoors. The acoustics were unmistakable, sharp, percussive, with that particular echo that only comes from a bullet leaving a chamber and finding nothing but air and tile and glass to bounce against. His body was already moving before his brain finished processing. He dropped the plastic bag from the discount store, 3 pairs of jeans he'd found on clearance for Jalen, who kept growing out of everything. And his eyes swept the crowd with the kind of precision that never really leaves a man, no matter how many years he spends trying to forget. There, a man in a black hoodie, pushing through the frozen shoppers near the fountain. His right hand was tucked inside his sleeve. His pace was wrong, too fast, too focused, cutting a straight line through chaos, while everyone else stood still like deer in headlights. And directly in his path, maybe 30 feet ahead, stood a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Yellow dress with white flowers, pink ice cream cone in her hand, already starting to drip down her fingers. Her mouth was open, her eyes wide, and she was looking around for someone who wasn't there. She was alone. Marcus's legs pumped harder. He weaved through a family huddled together, sidestepped an elderly man who dropped his shopping bags, cut around a woman clutching her purse to her chest like it could stop bullets. 20 feet. The man in the hoodie was closing fast. His hand was coming out of his sleeve now, and Marcus could see the black steel catching the fluorescent lights. 15 feet. "Get down!" Marcus shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the screaming that had finally started, by the thunder of footsteps as people began to run in every direction, by the crying of a baby somewhere he couldn't see. 10 feet. The little girl turned toward him. Her ice cream wobbled. Her eyes met his, brown and terrified, and so damn small against the massive, gleaming floor of this shopping mall that suddenly felt like a war zone. 5 feet. The second shot exploded. Marcus launched himself forward, arms outstretched, and caught the girl around her midsection. He twisted his body in midair, pulling her against his chest, shielding her with everything he had as they both went down hard on the tile. The impact knocked the wind out of him. The ice cream splattered pink across the white floor, and somewhere in his right arm, fire erupted, a searing, tearing pain that he recognized immediately. He'd been hit. But the girl was underneath him, shaking, crying, alive. "Stay down," Marcus said, his voice low and steady, even as blood began soaking through his sleeve. "Don't move. Keep your head down." She whimpered but obeyed, burying her face against his chest. Marcus lifted his head just enough to see the man in the hoodie stumble, then turn and run toward the east exit. Mall security was shouting now, their footsteps pounding closer, but the shooter had too much of a head start. He was going to make it out. Part of Marcus wanted to chase him. The old Marcus would have. The Marcus who'd spent 3 tours putting men like that in the ground from 800 meters away, would have been on his feet and running before the blood even hit the floor. But that Marcus was gone. This Marcus had a 9-year-old son at home who needed his father to come back from a simple shopping trip. This Marcus had learned the hard way that being a hero didn't pay the bills, didn't keep the lights on, didn't put food on the table for a growing boy who already asked too many questions about why they couldn't afford the things other kids had. So he stayed down. He kept the girl pressed beneath him, and he waited. Sir, are you hit?" A mall security guard dropped to his knees beside them, his face pale, his hands shaking as he reached for his radio. "I'm fine," Marcus said. "Check on her." "You're bleeding." "I said check on her." The guard hesitated, then nodded and spoke into his radio, calling for medical, calling for backup, calling for someone to lock down the exits, even though Marcus knew it was already too late for that. Slowly, carefully, Marcus rolled off the little girl and sat up. His arms screamed in protest, but he'd felt worse. The bullet had gone through the meat of his bicep, missing bone and artery. He'd been lucky. Or maybe luck had nothing to do with it. Maybe 14 years of training had positioned his body exactly right without him even thinking about it. The girl sat up too, her yellow dress dirty now, her face streaked with tears and snot and the remnants of pink ice cream. She stared at Marcus with those big brown eyes, and her bottom lip trembled. "Where's my mommy?" Marcus's heart cracked a little. "She's coming, sweetheart. She's coming. What's your name?" "Lily." "That's a pretty name. I'm Marcus. You're going to be okay, Lily. I promise." She nodded, still shaking, still crying, but something in her eyes shifted, a tiny flicker of trust from a child who'd just experienced the most terrifying moment of her young life. Sirens wailed in the distance. People were emerging from their hiding spots behind benches and inside stores, some crying, some on their phones, some just standing there in shock. The mall that had been bustling with Saturday shoppers 10 minutes ago now looked like the aftermath of a nightmare. Marcus pressed his hand against his wound and tried to slow his breathing. The adrenaline was still coursing through him, making everything sharp and bright and slightly surreal. He could feel his heart pounding against his ribs, could hear the blood rushing in his ears, could smell the copper tang of his own blood mixing with the artificial fragrance of the mall's ventilation system. And then he heard the footsteps. Not the cautious shuffle of frightened shoppers. Not the heavy boots of security guards. These were heels, expensive heels, clicking against the tile with a rhythm that screamed authority and fear in equal measure. "Lily! Lily!" A woman burst through the crowd, her face wild with terror. She wore a dark blazer over a silk blouse, a pencil skirt that probably cost more than Marcus made in a week, and those heels that clacked against the floor like gunshots of their own. She dropped to her knees beside the little girl, pulling her into her arms so tight that Lily let out a small squeak of protest. Oh my God, baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? Let me see your face." "Mommy, the man caught me. He caught me and we fell down." The woman's head snapped toward Marcus. He saw it happen, that split-second calculation behind her eyes. The assessment. The judgment. Her gaze traveled from his worn baseball cap, to his faded flannel shirt, to his calloused hands, to the blood soaking through his sleeve, and finally to his face. His black face. Something shifted in her expression. Not warmth, not gratitude. Something else. Something careful and guarded and instinctively suspicious. Marcus had seen that look 1,000 times in his life, from teachers who assumed he'd cheated when he got good grades, from store clerks who followed him down aisles, from police officers who pulled him over for driving while black in the wrong neighborhood, from the parents of Jalen's white friends who suddenly remembered they had other plans when Marcus showed up for pickup. He knew that look like he knew his own reflection. "Ma'am," the security guard said, "this man saved your daughter. He took a bullet protecting her." The woman's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her arms tightened around Lily, and she pulled the girl just slightly closer, just slightly away from Marcus. "Thank you," she finally said. The words were correct. The tone was not. It was the voice of someone checking a box, fulfilling a social obligation, saying what was expected while meaning something else entirely. Marcus just nodded. "Glad she's okay." More security arrived, then police, then EMTs with a stretcher that Marcus waved away because he knew exactly how much an ambulance ride to the emergency room would cost. And he didn't have that kind of money to throw at a wound that would heal fine on its own with some butterfly bandages and over-the-counter painkillers. "Sir, you need to get that looked at," one of the EMTs insisted. "I'm fine." "You were shot." "I've been shot before. I know what fine feels like." The EMT exchanged a look with her partner, the look people gave when they thought someone was being stupid but had no legal authority to force sense into them. "At least let us wrap it up. Stop the bleeding." Marcus let them. He sat in the back of the ambulance while they cleaned and bandaged his arm, while the police took statements from everyone nearby, while the woman, Lily's mother, spoke to officers with that same calm, controlled voice that suggested she was used to being in charge of every situation she entered. He learned her name from the officer who came to take his statement. Claire Donovan, CEO of Donovan Tech, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the region. Net worth somewhere in the hundreds of millions, if the business magazines were to be believed. And here was Marcus Thompson, warehouse worker, single father, struggling to make rent, covered in his own blood, and sitting in the back of an ambulance he couldn't afford to actually ride anywhere. The contrast was almost funny. Almost. "Mr. Thompson?" Marcus looked up. The officer standing before him was young, probably late 20s, with a clipboard and a pen, and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. "Need you to walk me through what happened." Marcus told him. Heard the shot, saw the man, saw the girl. Did what anyone would do. The officer wrote without making eye contact. "So you just happened to be there, just walking by?" "That's right." "And you just tackled her to the ground? Would you rather I'd let her get shot?" The officer's pen paused. He finally looked up, and there it was again. That look, that assessment, that judgment. "I'm just trying to understand why a man would throw himself in front of a bullet for a stranger's kid." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Because she was a kid. Because someone was about to hurt her. Because that's what you do. The officer made a note. "Military?" "Marines, 14 years. That explains it." He said it dismissively, like Marcus's service was just a footnote, just a box to check, just a detail that made the story make sense, instead of something that had defined 2 decades of his life. The officer asked a few more questions. What the shooter looked like, which direction he ran, whether Marcus had seen anyone else acting suspicious, and then closed his notebook. "We'll be in touch if we need anything else." No thank you. No acknowledgement. No nothing. Marcus watched him walk away, then leaned his head back against the ambulance wall and closed his eyes. This was his life. This had always been his life. Save someone's daughter, take a bullet doing it, and still get treated like a suspect instead of a hero. Still get looked at like a problem instead of a solution. Still get dismissed and overlooked and undervalued by people who'd never sacrificed a damn thing for anyone. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw the text from Mrs. Patterson, Jalen's babysitter. "Everything okay? Jalen's asking when you'll be home." Marcus typed back, "On my way. Got held up. Tell him I'm fine." He climbed out of the ambulance, his arm throbbing beneath the fresh bandages, and started walking toward the parking garage. Behind him, he could hear Claire Donovan still talking to the police, her voice steady and commanding, her words clipped and precise. She never looked back at him. The apartment was small and tired. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that barely fit 2 people standing side by side, and a living room dominated by a second-hand couch that sagged in the middle from years of use. But when Marcus walked through the door, it was home. Jalen was at the kitchen table, homework spread out in front of him, pencil tapping against his lip the way he always did when he was thinking hard about something. "Dad!" He jumped up and ran to Marcus, then stopped short when he saw the bandage peeking out from under his sleeve. "What happened to your arm?" Marcus pulled him into a one-armed hug. "Just a scratch, buddy. Nothing to worry about." Jalen pulled back and looked at him with eyes that were too old for 9 years. Eyes that had learned early to read between the lines, to notice when things weren't quite right, to worry about bills and rent and whether there would be enough food in the fridge at the end of the month. "You're lying." Marcus crouched down to meet his son's gaze. "There was some trouble at the mall. A little girl was in danger. I helped her. Got a little banged up, that's all." "You got shot? Who told you?" "It's on the news, Dad. They're saying a man at Riverside Mall took a bullet saving some rich lady's kid." Of course it was on the news. Of course. Marcus sighed and sat down on the couch, pulling Jalen down beside him. "Yeah, I got shot. But look at me. I'm fine. I'm right here. The bullet went clean through, didn't hit anything important. Just gonna have a cool scar to add to the collection." Jalen wasn't smiling. "You could have died." "But I didn't." "Dad." "Jalen." Marcus put his hand on his son's shoulder. "Listen to me. There was a little girl about to get hurt. She was scared and alone, and there was nobody else close enough to help. What was I supposed to do? Walk away?" Jalen was quiet for a moment, then softly, "No. No. That's not who we are. That's not who I raised you to be. We help people when they need help, even when it's hard, even when it costs us something. That's what being a good man means. Even when they don't say thank you?" Marcus blinked. "What?" "The news showed the lady, the mom. She didn't look happy. She looked scared of you." Kids saw everything. Kids understood more than adults gave them credit for. And Jalen had grown up black in America. He already knew what that look meant, even if he couldn't put words to it yet. "Some people," Marcus said carefully, "make judgments based on things that don't matter. How you look, how much money you have, where you come from. They see those things, and they think they know who you are. But they're wrong. They're always wrong. The only thing that matters is what you do, not what people think of you for doing it." "That's not fair." "No, it's not. But it's how things are sometimes. Our job isn't to change how other people think. Our job is to be good anyway, to do the right thing even when nobody thanks us for it, even when they treat us like we're the bad guys. That's what makes us different from them." Jalen leaned against his father's side, careful to avoid the injured arm. "I'm glad you're okay, Dad." "Me too, buddy. Me too." Later that night, after Jalen was asleep, Marcus sat alone in the kitchen with a glass of water and the wooden box he kept hidden above the refrigerator. He hadn't opened it in almost a year. The brass latch was worn smooth from all the times he touched it without opening it. All the nights he'd sat exactly like this, thinking about what was inside, but not quite able to face it. Tonight, he opened it. The folded American flag was on top, its triangular shape still crisp and perfect despite the years. Beneath it lay a tarnished military challenge coin from his old unit, 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines. and a letter so creased and worn it was starting to tear at the edges. He didn't take the letter out. He never did. He just looked at it, remembered who had written it and why, remembered the day it had arrived and everything that had changed afterward. The room around him faded. He was somewhere else now, somewhere hot and dry, where the sand got into everything and the air tasted like dust and diesel. He was lying flat on a rooftop, his rifle balanced on its bipod, his eye pressed to the scope, while his spotter called wind adjustments in his ear. Target acquired, 800 meters. Adjust 2 clicks left for wind. His breathing slowed. His heartbeat steadied. The world narrowed to a single point. The crosshairs centered on a man who was about to kill American soldiers if Marcus didn't stop him. He squeezed the trigger. The shot was perfect. They always were. But the faces never stopped visiting him at night. The men he'd killed from distances so great they never saw it coming, never knew who ended them, never had a chance to fight back. They were enemies, he knew that. They would have killed his brothers in arms without hesitation. But they were also men with mothers and fathers, and maybe wives and children who would never understand why Daddy didn't come home. Marcus had carried that weight for 14 years. He'd tried drinking it away, tried working it away, tried ignoring it and burying it and pretending it didn't exist. None of it worked. The weight was always there, pressing down on his shoulders, reminding him of what he was capable of, what he had been capable of. These days, he stocked shelves in a warehouse for $12 an hour. He drove a 15-year-old car that needed new brakes and a transmission that was starting to slip. He counted pennies at the grocery store and put items back on the shelf when the total got too high. He was nobody special, nothing important, just another struggling single dad trying to keep his head above water in a world that didn't care whether he sank or swam. But today, for one moment, he'd been the man he used to be. Fast, decisive, lethal in a different way. Lethal in his protection instead of his destruction. He'd saved a little girl's life, and her mother had looked at him like he was the threat. Marcus closed the wooden box and slid it back into its hiding spot. He finished his water, checked that the door was locked, checked that Jalen was still sleeping, and finally let himself sink into his own bed. His arm throbbed beneath the bandages. His body ached from the impact with the hard tile floor, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that this wasn't over. That Claire Donovan's careful look and guarded words meant something. That the other shoe was about to drop. He pushed the thought away and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he'd go back to work, back to the warehouse, back to being invisible, back to being nobody. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The call came at 6:47 a.m., 2 days after the shooting. Marcus was in the middle of his shift, his injured arm screaming every time he lifted a box onto the conveyor belt. His supervisor, Carl, had been watching him from the office window all night, not out of concern, but out of suspicion. Carl didn't like workers who couldn't keep up, and Marcus had been half a step slower since the injury. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant debt collectors or scammers or both. But something made him answer. "Mr. Cole?" The voice was sharp, male, official. "Thompson, Marcus Thompson." A pause. "My apologies, Mr. Thompson. This is Mark Hensley, head of security for Donovan Tech." Marcus stopped walking. The box in his hands suddenly felt heavier. "Yeah?" "We need to speak. In person. Today." It wasn't a request. It was an order. The kind of order that came from people who were used to being obeyed, who couldn't imagine anyone saying no, who had never had to ask twice for anything in their lives. "I'm at work." "This takes priority." "Says who?" Another pause. Longer this time. When Mark Hensley spoke again, his voice had an edge to it. "Says the woman whose daughter you saved. And the team of lawyers who are very interested in making sure that your involvement in this situation doesn't become problematic." Problematic. There it was, the other shoe finally dropping. "I'll be there at 3, Marcus said, "after my shift. We'd prefer 3 o'clock, or not at all." He hung up before Hensley could respond, then stood there in the middle of the warehouse, surrounded by boxes and conveyor belts and the hum of machinery, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The lobby of Donovan Tech's headquarters was everything Marcus's apartment was not. Clean lines, glass walls, polished floors that reflected the light from a ceiling that seemed impossibly high. People in suits, moving with purpose, tablets in hand, wireless earbuds glowing, coffees from places that charged $8 for a cup. Marcus stood in his flannel shirt and his worn jeans, and his work boots that still had dust on them from the warehouse floor. He cleaned up as best he could, but there was no hiding what he was, no hiding where he came from. The receptionist looked at him the way you might look at a stain on an expensive carpet. "Can I help you?" "Marcus Thompson. I have a meeting with Mark Hensley." She checked her computer, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the keyboard. "Take a seat. Someone will come get you." Marcus didn't sit. He stood near the window, watching the city sprawl out below, watching the cars and the people and the endless motion of money flowing from one place to another. This was a different world, a world he'd never been part of, never been welcomed into, never even glimpsed except from the outside looking in. "Mr. Thompson." He turned. Mark Hensley was everything Marcus expected. Tall, fit, expensive suit, handshake that was firm in a way that felt like a challenge. Mid-40s, probably former military himself based on his posture, but the kind of military that led to private sector security jobs instead of warehouse work and disability claims. "This way." They walked through corridors lined with motivational posters and glass-walled offices where people typed furiously and talked on phones and looked very, very important. Marcus kept his expression neutral, his shoulders straight, his gaze forward. He'd walked through plenty of hostile territory in his life. This was just a different kind. The conference room was large enough to fit his entire apartment inside it. A massive table dominated the center, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than his car. And at the head of the table sat Claire Donovan. She looked different than she had at the mall, more composed, more controlled. The wild terror of a mother who'd almost lost her child had been replaced by something harder, something sharper. The face of a woman who ran a billion-dollar company and didn't get there by being soft. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "please, sit." Marcus sat. Mark remained standing, positioning himself near the door like a guard. Like this was an interrogation instead of a conversation. "We appreciate what you did at the mall," Claire began. Her voice was measured, careful. "My daughter is safe because of you. I want you to know that I'm grateful." Marcus waited. "However," she continued, and there it was, the however, the but, the catch that he'd known was coming since the moment she'd looked at him with those careful, guarded eyes. "We find ourselves in a complicated situation." "How's that?" "Your name has been in the news. Reporters are asking questions about you, about your background, about your connection to my family." "There is no connection. I was at a mall." "Your daughter was in danger. I helped." "And yet, here we are." She folded her hands on the table. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know you. I don't know anything about you, except that you happen to be in the right place at the right time to save my daughter's life. That could be coincidence. It could also be something else." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "What exactly are you implying?" Mark spoke up from near the door. "We've run a preliminary background check on you. Military service. Impressive. Honorable discharge. But then things get murky. Some sealed records. Gaps in employment. A pattern that's difficult to read. My service record is sealed because the work I did was classified. That's how it works when you spend a decade in special operations. As for gaps in employment, I'm a single father. Sometimes I had to take time off to take care of my kid. That's not a crime." "No one said it was," Claire interjected. "But you have to understand our position. My daughter is everything to me. I need to know that the man who saved her isn't a threat." The word hung in the air between them. Threat. Marcus had been called a lot of things in his life. Soldier, sniper, father, worker. But never, not once, had anyone looked him in the eye after he'd taken a bullet for their child and called him a threat. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I was shot. Protecting your daughter. There's a hole in my arm right now that's going to leave a scar I'll carry for the rest of my life. And you're sitting here asking me if I'm the bad guy?" Claire's expression didn't change. "I'm asking you to help us feel secure. That's all." Mark slid a piece of paper across the table. "Sign this non-disclosure agreement. Agree not to speak to the press. Submit to a full background investigation, and we'll make sure your medical expenses from the incident are covered." Marcus looked at the paper. Then he looked at Claire. Then he looked at Mark. "You want me to sign away my right to talk about what happened? To prove I'm not dangerous? After I saved her?" "It's standard procedure." "It's control." Marcus stood. "You're scared. I get it. Someone tried to hurt your kid, and you don't know who or why, and now you're looking for threats everywhere. But I'm not the enemy, Ms. Donovan. I'm the guy who put himself between a bullet and a 6-year-old girl. If you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you." Mark stepped forward. "Think about your son before you make this harder than it has to be." Marcus froze. The room went very, very quiet. "What did you say?" "Your son, Jalen, 9 years old, attends Jefferson Elementary. You want to make sure he's protected, don't you? Things can get complicated when powerful people feel threatened. I'm sure you understand." Marcus turned slowly to face him. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "Are you threatening my child?" "I'm making an observation. That's all." For one long moment, Marcus saw red. He saw the rooftop in Afghanistan. He saw the crosshairs. He saw every face of every man he'd ever killed, and how easy it would be to add one more. Then he saw Jalen's face. Jalen waiting at home. Jalen, who needed his father to walk out of this building and come back to him. Marcus unclenched his fists. He picked up the paper, looked at it one more time, and then set it back down on the table. "I'm not signing anything. I'm not submitting to anything. And if you ever mention my son's name again, you and I are going to have a very different kind of conversation." He walked to the door. Mark moved to block him, but something in Marcus's eyes made him step aside at the last second. At the threshold, Marcus paused and looked back at Claire. "Your daughter called me a hero, said I saved her life. What do you call me, Ms. Donovan?" She didn't answer. Marcus nodded slowly, like he'd expected nothing else, and walked out. He was halfway across the parking garage when his phone buzzed. Carl, from the warehouse. "Marcus, we need to talk. I'm heading back now. Be there in 20. Don't bother. Corporate got a call. Someone from Donovan Tech. They're saying we need to let you go. Bad publicity, they said. Can't have employees making the news." Marcus stopped walking. "Carl, I've been there 4 years. Never missed a shift, never caused a problem. I know. But this came from the top. My hands are tied, Marcus. I'm sorry. Come by tomorrow to pick up your last check. The line went dead. Marcus stood alone in the parking garage, surrounded by luxury cars that cost more than he'd make in a lifetime, and felt the walls closing in around him. 2 days ago, he'd been invisible, struggling but surviving, getting by. Now he had no job, a hole in his arm, and powerful people who saw him as a threat to be managed instead of a man who'd done the right thing. He got in his car, started the engine, and drove home to his son. Behind him, through the glass windows of Donovan Tech, Claire Donovan watched him go. Her expression was unreadable, but her hands, folded on the conference room table, were shaking. The drive home took 47 minutes. Marcus knew because he counted every single one of them, watching the numbers change on the dashboard clock while his mind raced through calculations he didn't want to make. Rent was due in 12 days. $850. He had $600 in checking, maybe another $200 in the coffee can he kept hidden in the back of his closet for emergencies. That left him $50 short, and that was before utilities, before groceries, before the gas he'd need to get to job interviews that didn't exist yet. 4 years at that warehouse. 4 years of showing up early, staying late, never complaining, never causing problems. And one phone call from a company worth billions had erased all of it in 30 seconds. When he walked through the apartment door, Jalen was on the couch watching cartoons. The boy's face lit up for a moment, then fell when he saw his father's expression. "Dad, what's wrong?" Marcus forced a smile. "Nothing, buddy. Just tired." "You're lying again." Jalen. "You always get that line between your eyebrows when something's wrong. You've had it since you came home from the mall. What happened?" 9 years old, and the kid could read him like a book. Marcus didn't know whether to be proud or heartbroken. He sat down on the couch, the cushions sagging beneath him like they always did, and pulled Jalen close. "I lost my job today." Jalen was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because of the shooting?" "Yeah, because of the shooting." "That's not fair. You saved that girl." "I know. So why are they punishing you?" Marcus stared at the television, where cartoon characters chased each other in bright colors across a world where problems got solved in 22 minutes and everyone lived happily ever after. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "people with power get scared. And when powerful people get scared, they hurt the people around them. Not because those people did anything wrong, but because hurting them feels like control, feels like safety." "That's stupid." "Yeah, it is." "What are we going to do?" Marcus squeezed his son's shoulder. "We're going to be okay. I'll find another job. I always do." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. He was 36 years old, with a military record he couldn't talk about, a resume full of manual labor jobs, and now a name that had been in the news connected to one of the most powerful women in the city. Who was going to hire him? Who was going to take that risk? That night, after Jalen went to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open in front of him. He scrolled through job listings, warehouse positions, delivery driver openings, night security gigs at strip malls and office parks. He applied to everything, tailoring his sparse cover letters to each posting, trying to sound enthusiastic about opportunities that paid less than what he'd been making. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, again. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick it up. "Mr. Thompson?" A woman's voice this time, professional, clipped. "I'm calling on behalf of Donovan Tech's legal department. We wanted to follow up on your meeting with Mr. Hensley today." I already told him no. We understand. However, we'd like to make you aware that we're prepared to increase our offer. Full medical coverage for your injury, compensation for lost wages, and a settlement of $50,000, contingent on signing the non-disclosure agreement and agreeing to a background investigation. Marcus laughed. It came out harsh and bitter, nothing like his real laugh. $50,000 to shut up and let you dig through my life. That the going rate for saving a CEO's daughter these days? Mr. Thompson, this is a generous offer. We're trying to make this right. No, you're trying to make this go away. There's a difference. I'd encourage you to think carefully before rejecting. I already thought about it. The answer's still no. He hung up before she could respond, then sat there staring at the phone like it might bite him. $50,000. That was more money than he'd seen in years. That was new brakes for his car. That was a cushion for rent. That was security, stability, breathing room. And all he had to do was let them treat him like a criminal for doing the right thing. He put the phone face down on the table and didn't look at it again. The next morning, Marcus was up at 5. He made breakfast for Jalen, scrambled eggs and toast, the cheap kind of bread that always went stale too fast, and had his son dressed and ready for school by 7. "You're not going to work?" Jalen asked, his backpack hanging off one shoulder. "Got some things to take care of today. Job stuff." "Oh." Jalen paused at the door. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I hope they're not all mean like those people." Marcus felt something crack in his chest. "Me too, buddy. Me too." He spent the day driving around the city, stopping at warehouses and distribution centers, filling out applications on clipboards, and trying to make small talk with managers who looked at him with varying degrees of interest and suspicion. Some of them recognized his name from the news. Most of them didn't call back. By 3 o'clock, he'd applied to 11 places and heard back from none. His arm was throbbing. He'd skipped the morning's dose of painkillers because the bottle was almost empty and he couldn't afford to refill it. And his gas tank was getting low. He pulled into the parking lot of a fast food restaurant, bought the cheapest thing on the menu, and sat in his car eating a $1 burger while watching people come and go through the drive-thru. His phone buzzed, an actual name this time, James Carter. Marcus answered immediately. "James." "Marcus, heard about what happened. You okay?" James Carter had served with Marcus in the Marines, back when they were both young and stupid and thought they were invincible. They'd lost touch for a few years after getting out, but reconnected when James moved to the city for work. He was the closest thing Marcus had to a real friend these days. "I'm fine. Arm's healing." "I'm not talking about the arm. I'm talking about the job. Word travels fast, brother. Donovan Tech made some calls." Marcus's grip tightened on his phone. "Calls to who?" "Everybody. Every warehouse within 20 miles got a courtesy heads up that Marcus Thompson is trouble. That you're unstable. That you might be a liability." The burger in Marcus's stomach turned to lead. "They can't do that." "They're doing it. I heard from a buddy who works security at Maxwell Distribution. Said they were specifically told not to hire you if you applied." "That's..." Marcus stopped. "What was it? Illegal?" "Maybe. Provable? Definitely not." Claire Donovan had lawyers who got paid more per hour than Marcus made in a week. She could bury him in legal fees before he ever saw the inside of a courtroom. "What am I supposed to do, James? I've got a kid. I've got rent. I can't just..." I know. Look, I might have something for you. It's not much. Night security at a construction site. Off the books. Cash under the table. Guy who runs it owes me a favor. It's not a career, but it'll keep the lights on until this blows over. If it blows over. It will. These people have short attention spans. Something else will happen. Someone else will piss them off, and they'll forget all about you. You just got to survive long enough for that to happen. Marcus closed his eyes. Thanks, James. I mean it. That's what brothers are for. I'll text you the address. Start tomorrow night. After they hung up, Marcus sat in his car for a long time, watching the sun start to sink toward the horizon. He thought about Claire Donovan in her glass tower, surrounded by people who said yes to everything she wanted. He thought about Mark Hensley and his expensive suit and his casual threat against a 9-year-old boy. He thought about all the people who'd looked at him his whole life and seen something dangerous, something suspicious, something less than human. And he thought about Lily, 6 years old, yellow dress, pink ice cream, the way she'd looked at him when the chaos settled, like he was the safest person in the world. "The man caught me," she'd told her mother. "He caught me, and we fell down." He'd saved her life. He'd taken a bullet for her. And her mother had responded by trying to destroy his. Marcus started the car and drove home to his son. That night, after dinner, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, stretched thin with extra water to make it last, Jalen asked if they could watch a movie together. "Sure, buddy. What do you want to watch?" "Something with superheroes." They ended up on the couch, with a blanket pulled over both of them, watching a movie about a man in a metal suit who saved the world and got thanked for it. Marcus tried to focus on the screen, but his mind kept drifting. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Do you think you're a superhero?" Marcus looked at his son. "What makes you ask that?" "You saved that girl, like in the movies. You ran toward the bad guy when everyone else was running away." "That doesn't make me a superhero, Jalen. That just makes me someone who did what needed to be done." "But the superheroes in the movies always do what needs to be done. That's what makes them heroes." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "The difference is, in the movies, the heroes get rewarded. They get parades and medals, and everyone loves them. In real life, sometimes you do the right thing, and people treat you like you're the villain. Sometimes you save someone's daughter, and they try to take everything you have." Jalen frowned. "That's not fair." "No, it's not." "So why do it? Why be good if people are just going to hurt you for it?" It was the kind of question that deserved a real answer. Marcus turned off the TV and shifted to face his son fully. Because being good isn't about what you get back. It's about who you are. It's about looking in the mirror and being able to live with the person looking back at you. I could have walked away at that mall. Could have kept my head down and let someone else handle it. But then I would have had to live with knowing I let a little girl get hurt when I could have stopped it. And that, he shook his head, that's not a life I'm willing to live. Even if it costs you? Even if it costs me everything. Jalen was quiet, processing. Then he leaned his head against his father's shoulder. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "No, buddy. I want you to be better than me. I want you to live in a world where doing the right thing doesn't cost you your job, where people judge you by your heart and not your skin. I want you to be the kind of man who changes that world, not just survives it." "Can we change it together?" "Yeah." Marcus pulled his son close. "Yeah, we can try." The next few days blurred into a routine that felt like survival. Marcus worked the night security job James had found for him. 12 hours standing in the cold, watching an empty construction site, making sure nobody stole copper wire or spray painted the equipment. It paid $200 a week, cash, which wasn't enough, but was better than nothing. During the days, he kept applying for jobs, kept getting rejected, kept hearing the same excuses wrapped in different words. Not a good fit. Going with another candidate. Position filled. Claire Donovan's reach was longer than he'd imagined. On the 4th day, his phone rang with another unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick it up. "Mr. Thompson, this is Detective Morrison with the Metro Police Department. We need you to come down to the station. It's about the mall shooting. Marcus's heart rate spiked. Am I under arrest? No, sir. We just have some follow-up questions. New developments in the case. He went. What choice did he have? The police station was everything he expected. Fluorescent lights, stale coffee smell, officers who looked at him with that familiar mix of suspicion and dismissal. Detective Morrison was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who led him to an interview room and offered him water he didn't drink. Mr. Thompson, we've been investigating the mall shooting. The man you encountered, Tyler Briggs, was not acting alone. Marcus leaned forward. What do you mean? Briggs was a hired gun. Someone paid him to target Lily Donovan specifically. We believe there's a larger conspiracy here, possibly connected to business rivals of Donovan Tech. Have you told Claire Donovan this? We're working with her security team, which brings me to why you're here. Morrison opened a folder and slid a photograph across the table. Do you recognize this man? Marcus looked. The photo showed a heavy-set man with a beard and cold eyes, standing outside what looked like a restaurant. Never seen him before. His name is Victor Rojas. He's a known associate of Tyler Briggs. Our intelligence suggests he may be planning a second attempt on the Donovan family. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. A second attempt? We believe so, which is why we're reaching out to you. You demonstrated exceptional tactical awareness at the mall. The way you identified the threat, neutralized it, protected the child, that's not civilian behavior. That's training. I'm a Marine, 14 years. We know. We've seen your record. At least, the parts that aren't classified. Morrison leaned back in her chair. Mr. Thompson, I'm going to be direct with you. Donovan Tech has their own security, but frankly, they dropped the ball. Mark Hensley was supposed to be with Lily at the mall that day. He wasn't. He was getting coffee 3 blocks away. If you hadn't been there, she'd be dead. Yes, she would. Morrison closed the folder. We're not asking you to do anything. We're just making you aware of the situation. If you see anything suspicious, hear anything unusual, we'd appreciate a call. Marcus nodded slowly. Why are you telling me this? I'm nobody. I'm just the guy who happened to be there. Morrison smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because sometimes the guy who happened to be there is the only one who sees what's coming next. He left the station with his mind racing. Someone had hired a gunman to kill a 6-year-old girl. Someone was planning to try again. And the only person who'd managed to stop the first attempt was an unemployed warehouse worker with a hole in his arm and a target on his back. The universe had a sick sense of humor. That night, at the construction site, Marcus stood in the darkness and thought about everything Morrison had told him. He thought about Lily's face, pale and scared beneath him on the mall floor. He thought about Claire Donovan's guarded eyes, her careful words, her obvious suspicion. She was trying to destroy him. She'd gotten him fired, blacklisted him across the city, sent lawyers to pressure him into silence. And somewhere out there, someone was planning to kill her daughter, and her expensive security team was too busy getting coffee to notice. Part of him, the tired, bitter, beaten down part, wanted to let it happen. Wanted to step back and let Claire Donovan face the consequences of her own choices. She had money. She had power. She had an army of people whose job it was to protect her. Why should Marcus Thompson, who she'd treated like dirt, lift a finger to help her? But then he thought about Lily. Lily wasn't her mother. Lily was 6 years old and innocent, and had done nothing to deserve any of this. Lily had called him a hero, had looked at him with those big, trusting eyes, had clutched her ruined ice cream cone while he promised her everything would be okay. Marcus couldn't let her die. Even if her mother deserved to suffer, Lily didn't. He pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long time. Then he did something he never thought he'd do. He called Donovan Tech. "This is the main line for Donovan Tech. How may I direct your call?" "I need to speak to Claire Donovan. Tell her it's Marcus Thompson. Tell her it's about her daughter's safety." There was a pause. Then, "Please hold." He waited. 1 minute. 2. 3. Finally, a click. "Mr. Thompson?" Claire's voice was cold, controlled. "I thought we made our position clear. Your daughter is still in danger." Silence. "The police told me. The shooter, Briggs, he was hired. Someone paid him to kill Lily specifically. And they think he wasn't alone. They think someone's going to try again." More silence. When Claire spoke again, her voice had lost some of its ice. "How do you know this?" "Detective Morrison, Metro Police. She brought me in for questioning today. Showed me photos, gave me the whole rundown. Whatever you think of me, Donovan, I'm not your enemy. But someone out there is, and they're coming for your daughter." He heard her breathing on the other end of the line, heard the crack in her armor, just for a moment. "Why are you telling me this? After everything, after how we treated you, why would you help us?" Marcus stared out at the dark construction site, at the skeletal frames of buildings that would someday house families, businesses, dreams. "Because Lily called me a hero, and heroes don't stop doing the right thing just because it hurts." He hung up before she could respond, and somewhere across the city, in her glass tower office, Claire Donovan sat alone in the dark and wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. The call from Claire Donovan came at 6:17 a.m., 3 days after Marcus had warned her. He was just getting home from the construction site, his body aching from 12 hours in the cold, when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He almost ignored it, almost let it go to voicemail like all the others. But something in his gut told him to answer. "Mr. Thompson?" Her voice was different now, stripped of the ice, the control, the careful distance. She sounded tired. She sounded scared. "I need to see you. Today. Please." Please. That word, from her mouth, told him everything he needed to know. "Where?" "My office, Donovan Tech. I'll have security expecting you at the front desk." "Last time I was in that building, your security chief threatened my son." "Mark is no longer employed here. I terminated him yesterday." A pause. "I should have done it sooner. I should have done a lot of things differently." Marcus was quiet for a moment, letting that sink in. Then, "I'll be there at noon. I need to get my boy to school first." "Thank you." She hung up before he could respond. At noon, Marcus walked back into the lobby of Donovan Tech. The same receptionist was there, but she didn't look at him like a stain this time. She smiled, checked his name on her screen, and directed him to the elevators with something that almost resembled warmth. Claire met him on the executive floor herself. No handlers, no lawyers, no security guards hovering in the background. Just her, standing alone in the hallway, looking smaller than she had before. "Thank you for coming." "You said it was important." "It is." She gestured toward her office. "Please." They walked in silence. Her office was large, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, the kind of view that reminded you exactly how much power the person behind the desk wielded. But Claire didn't sit behind her desk. She sat on a small couch near the window and waited for Marcus to join her. He didn't sit. He stood near the door, arms crossed, waiting. "I owe you an apology," she began. "A real one. Not the corporate-speak nonsense I gave you before." "Okay." "When I saw you at the mall, when I saw you bleeding on the floor next to my daughter, I didn't see a hero. I saw... She stopped, shook her head. I saw what I was taught to see. A black man in worn clothes. Someone I didn't know. Someone I couldn't control. And I was scared. Not of what had happened, but of what it meant that my daughter's life had been saved by someone I would have walked past on the street without a second glance. Marcus said nothing. He just watched her, letting her fill the silence with the truth she'd been avoiding. I told myself I was being careful, protective, that any mother would have done the same. But that's not what it was. She finally looked up at him. It was prejudice, pure and simple. I judged you based on how you looked and where you came from, and I punished you for saving my daughter's life. I got you fired. I blacklisted you. I sent lawyers to intimidate you. And you responded by calling to warn me that someone was still trying to kill my child. I didn't do it for you. I know. You did it for Lily. That's what makes it worse. She stood and walked to the window, her back to him. I built this company from nothing. I fought through every barrier, every glass ceiling, every man who told me I couldn't. And somewhere along the way, I became exactly the kind of person I'd always resented. I looked at you, and I saw less. And I was wrong. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something close to understanding. What do you want from me, Ms. Donovan? She turned around. I want you to help me protect my daughter. You have security. You have the police. The police are stretched thin. My security team is compromised. I can't trust that Mark didn't leave behind people who are loyal to him instead of me. And the threat is real. Detective Morrison confirmed it this morning. Victor Rojas was spotted in the city yesterday. They think he's planning something soon. So hire a professional. You've got the money. I don't need a professional. I need someone who's already proven they'll put their body between my daughter and a bullet. She took a step toward him. I need you. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. You tried to destroy me. You threatened my son. And now you want me to work for you? I'm not asking you to work for me. I'm asking you to protect Lily. Name your terms, whatever you want. Money, benefits, a job when this is over, it's yours. I'll put it in writing. I'll sign whatever contract makes you feel secure. It's not about security. Then what is it about? Marcus stared at her for a long moment. It's about respect. You looked at me like I was nothing, like I didn't matter, like my life was worth less than yours because I stock shelves for a living. And you sit in a corner office. You want my help? You don't buy it. You earn it. Claire nodded slowly. How do I earn it? You start by being honest with me, about everything, about the threat, about what you know, about why someone wants your daughter dead. No more games, no more lawyers, just the truth. Okay. She walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. 6 months ago, Donovan Tech was approached by a company called Meridian Holdings. They wanted to acquire us. I said no. They didn't take it well. Didn't take it well how? Threats, at first. Veiled ones. Suggestions that I might regret the decision. Then our systems started getting hacked. Small things. Emails leaked, files corrupted. We traced it back to Meridian, but we couldn't prove it in court. 2 months ago, I received a letter. No return address, no signature. Just a photograph of Lily walking home from school, and a single sentence. Reconsider. Marcus felt cold fury building in his stomach. They're using your daughter to pressure you into selling. Yes. When I still refused, the mall shooting happened. Tyler Briggs was hired by someone connected to Meridian. We can't prove it yet, but we know. And Victor Rojas? Briggs's partner. They served time together. Morrison thinks Rojas is here to finish what Briggs started. Marcus took the folder and flipped through it. Photographs of Rojas, maps of the city, threat assessments from security consultants. This wasn't just paranoia. This was a coordinated campaign against a woman who'd made powerful enemies. Why not go to the FBI? This is corporate terrorism. I have. They're investigating. But investigations take time, and Victor Rojas isn't going to wait for warrants and subpoenas. He's going to make a move, and it's going to happen soon. Marcus closed the folder. What's Lily's schedule? School until 3. Dance class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Home by 5 most days. I've kept her out of public spaces since the mall, but I can't keep her locked up forever. She's 6 years old. She doesn't understand why she can't go to the park or see her friends. Does she know about the danger? She knows Mommy's being extra careful. She doesn't know why. Good. Keep it that way. Marcus set the folder on her desk. I'll need full access to your security team, what's left of it. And I'll need to see the building, your home, the school, everywhere Lily goes. You'll have whatever you need. And I want your word, your real word, not a contract, that when this is over, you'll make things right. Not just for me, for my son, for everyone your company hurt because you were scared and didn't want to admit it. Claire met his eyes. You have my word. Marcus nodded once. Then let's get to work. The next 2 days were a blur of reconnaissance and preparation. Marcus walked every inch of the Donovan Tech building, mapping exits and blind spots, identifying weaknesses in the security protocols. He visited Lily's school and spoke with the principal about emergency procedures. He drove the routes Claire's driver used and found 3 places where an ambush would be easy and escape routes were limited. At night, he went home to Jalen and pretended everything was normal. Made dinner, helped with homework, watched TV together on the sagging couch. But every time his phone buzzed, his heart rate spiked. On the 3rd day, Claire called him into her office. We have a problem. Marcus knew from her tone that it was serious. What? The gala. I forgot. I committed months ago to hosting the Children's Hospital fundraiser at Donovan Tech this Saturday. 300 guests, press coverage, catering staff. I can't cancel without explaining why. And if I explain why, you tip off whoever's watching that you know they're coming. Exactly. Marcus paced the length of her office, his mind racing through scenarios. 300 people. That's 300 potential threats, plus catering, plus event staff, plus press. You're looking at maybe 500 people total who could have access to this building. I know, my security team is already overwhelmed. You need to bring in outside help, private contractors you can trust. I don't have time to vet new people. Marcus stopped pacing. I know someone. Former Marine. Runs security operations now. He's the one who got me the night job after you blacklisted me. If I call him, he'll bring in people he trusts. How soon? I'll find out. He called James that night. I need a favor. A big one. Bigger than the night job? Much bigger. Marcus explained the situation. The gala, the threat, the stakes. James was quiet for a long moment. This is serious, Marcus. We're talking about active threats, hundreds of civilians, a target that's already been hit once. I know. And you're sure about this woman? After everything she did to you? I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for her daughter. Lily didn't ask for any of this. She's just a kid. Another pause. Then James sighed. Yeah, okay. I'll make some calls. I can get you 6 guys, all former military, all solid. But Marcus, this can't go sideways. If something happens at that gala, and it comes out that we were running unauthorized security, it won't go sideways. I won't let it. Famous last words, brother. Saturday arrived faster than Marcus was ready for. He spent the morning going over the security plan one final time with James's team. 6 men who'd served in places most people couldn't find on a map, who knew how to spot trouble before it started, who had the same look in their eyes that Marcus saw in his own mirror every morning. Entry points covered? Marcus asked. All 8, James confirmed. 2 men on the main entrance, 2 on the service entrance, 1 on the roof access, 1 floating between floors. Guest screening? Metal detectors at the door, bag checks, ID verification against the guest list. Catering staff? All vetted through the agency. No red flags, but we're keeping eyes on them anyway. Marcus nodded. It was as good as they could make it. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that Victor Rojas wasn't going to walk through the front door and set off a metal detector. He was going to find another way. The gala started at 7. Marcus positioned himself near the main staircase, where he could see both the entrance and the upper levels. He wore a dark suit Claire had provided, one of the few things she'd given him that he hadn't refused, and an earpiece connected to James's team. Guests poured in, politicians, business executives, society types dripping with jewelry and small talk. They flowed around Marcus like water around a stone, barely noticing him, too caught up in their own importance to register the black man standing quietly at the edge of the room. Good. Invisible was exactly what he needed to be. Claire arrived with Lily at 7:15. The little girl wore a blue dress and had her hair in braids, and she was holding her mother's hand tight. When she saw Marcus, her face broke into a huge smile. "Mr. Marcus!" He crouched down to her level. "Hey, Lily, you look very pretty tonight. Mommy said you're going to keep us safe." "That's right. I'm going to be right here all night. If anything scares you, you come find me, okay?" She nodded solemnly. "Okay." Claire met his eyes over her daughter's head. "Thank you," she mouthed. He gave a slight nod, then stood and resumed his watch. The first 2 hours passed without incident. Speeches were made, donations were announced, waiters circulated with champagne and tiny appetizers that probably cost more per tray than Marcus's weekly grocery bill. Everything looked normal, but Marcus's instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. Something was off. He could feel it in his bones, the same way he'd felt it in the mall seconds before the first gunshot. A pressure in the air, a wrongness that defied explanation. He keyed his earpiece. "James, anything on your end?" "Negative, all quiet." "Check the catering staff again. Something doesn't feel right." "Copy, running secondary checks now." Marcus scanned the room again. His eyes passed over the guests, the servers, the security guards at the doors. Nothing stood out. Nothing looked wrong. And then he saw him, a man in a catering uniform, moving through the crowd with a tray of champagne glasses. His posture was wrong, too rigid, too controlled, like someone who was used to a different kind of uniform. His eyes weren't watching where he was going. They were watching Claire and Lily. Marcus started moving. "James, catering staff, northeast corner of the room. White male, dark hair, moving toward the stage. I need confirmation on his credentials." "Checking." "Marcus, that guy's not on our list. He's not on any list." "He's on mine." Marcus pushed through the crowd, trying to move fast without causing a panic. The man was getting closer to Claire. 20 feet. 15. His hand was reaching under the tray. "Everyone down!" Marcus's shout cut through the chatter of the gala like a blade. People froze, confused, unsure whether to obey or laugh it off. The man dropped the tray. The champagne glasses shattered on the floor, and in his hand was a gun, black and sleek, and pointed directly at Lily Donovan. Time slowed. Marcus was still 10 feet away, Too far to tackle him, too far to grab the weapon, but not too far to get between the gun and the girl. He threw himself forward, arms outstretched, just as the shot rang out. The impact hit him like a sledgehammer to the chest. He crashed into Lily, wrapping his body around her, taking her to the ground for the second time in 2 weeks. His back was on fire. His lungs weren't working right, but she was beneath him, screaming, alive. Above them, chaos erupted. James's team converged on the shooter from 3 directions. Victor Rojas, because that's who it was, Marcus realized. The face from the photographs burned into his memory, tried to raise his weapon for a second shot, but he never got the chance. James hit him low. Another team member hit him high. The guns skittered across the floor, and Rojas went down under a pile of bodies, struggling and cursing and threatening, until someone put a knee on his neck and zip-tied his hands behind his back. Marcus rolled off Lily, gasping for air. The world was spinning. He could hear screaming, sirens, the thunder of footsteps as people ran in every direction. "Mr. Marcus?" Lily's face appeared above him, her cheeks wet with tears, her voice shaking. "You saved me again." He tried to smile, but his body wasn't cooperating. "Told you I'd keep you safe." Claire was there now, pulling Lily into her arms, shouting for medics. Her perfect composure shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Marcus, Marcus, stay with me. Help is coming." He wanted to tell her it was okay. He wanted to tell her that this was the job, that this was what he'd signed up for, that he'd rather take 100 bullets than let a child die. But his mouth wouldn't form the words. The last thing he saw before everything went dark was Lily's face, streaked with tears, mouthing the word hero over and over again. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus Thompson believed it might be true. The beeping was the first thing Marcus heard when he came back to the world. Steady, rhythmic, mechanical. The kind of sound that tells you you're alive before your brain fully catches up to what that means. He tried to open his eyes, but they felt like they'd been glued shut. His body was heavy, distant, like it belonged to someone else. There was a dull ache in his chest that flared into sharp pain every time he breathed. "Dad?" Jalen's voice. Close. Scared. Marcus forced his eyes open. The hospital room swam into focus slowly. White walls, fluorescent lights, machines with wires running to his chest and arms. And beside his bed, sitting in a chair that was too big for him, was his son. "Hey, buddy." His voice came out as a croak, barely above a whisper. "Dad!" Jalen lunged forward and grabbed his hand. "You're awake! You're finally awake!" "How long?" Marcus tried to sit up, but his body immediately vetoed that decision. Pain shot through his chest, and he fell back against the pillow, gasping. "Don't move. The doctor said you're not supposed to move." Jalen's eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. "You've been asleep for 2 days. They said the bullet hit your vest, but some of the fragments, they went into your chest, and you lost a lot of blood, and they had to do surgery, and I was so scared, Dad." "I thought you were going to die." Marcus squeezed his son's hand. "I'm not going anywhere. I promised you, remember? I'm right here." "You got shot again. For the same girl." "Yeah, I did." "Why?" It was the same question Jalen had asked before, back in their apartment after the mall. But this time there was something different in his voice. Not accusation, not confusion. Something that sounded almost like understanding. "Because she needed help," Marcus said, "and I was the only one who could give it." Jalen was quiet for a moment. Then, "She's been here. The little girl, Lily. She came with her mom yesterday and the day before. She made you a card." He pointed to the bedside table, where a piece of construction paper was propped up against a cup of water. Marcus couldn't read it from this angle, but he could see the bright colors, blue and yellow and pink, and the uneven letters of a 6-year-old's handwriting. Her mom's been here too, Jalen continued. A lot. She sat with you last night when I had to go home with Mrs. Patterson. She was crying. Marcus blinked. Claire Donovan was crying? Yeah, I saw her through the window. She was holding your hand and crying and talking to you, even though you couldn't hear her. Jalen looked at him with those two old eyes. I think she feels bad. About before. Before Marcus could respond, the door opened and a nurse walked in. She checked his vitals, asked him questions about his pain level, and told him the doctor would be in shortly. She was professional and efficient, but she kept glancing at him with something that looked like awe. You're the one from the news, she said finally. The man who stopped the shooter at the gala. I guess. My daughter goes to the same school as the Donovan girl. All the kids are talking about you. She smiled. You're a hero, Mr. Thompson. She left before he could argue. The doctor came next, a middle-aged man with glasses and a calm demeanor who explained what had happened in clinical terms. The bullet had hit the Kevlar vest Marcus had been wearing, a precaution he'd insisted on, despite Claire's assurances that the gala would be safe. But the impact had cracked 2 ribs and sent fragments into his chest cavity. They'd removed the fragments surgically and repaired the damage, but he'd need weeks of recovery before he'd be back to full strength. You're lucky, the doctor said. A few inches to the left, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. Lucky. There was that word again. After the doctor left, Marcus lay in the hospital bed and stared at the ceiling. His chest hurt. His arm still ached from the first shooting. His whole body felt like it had been through a war, which, in a way, it had. But Lily was alive. Victor Rojas was in custody, and according to Jalen, the threat from Meridian Holdings was being investigated by the FBI, now that there was a clear connection between the company and 2 attempted murders. He'd done what he set out to do. He'd kept his promise. The door opened again. Claire Donovan stood in the doorway, looking nothing like the polished CEO he'd met in the conference room weeks ago. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. No makeup that he could see. And her eyes. Her eyes were red and tired and filled with something he'd never expected to see there. Guilt. You're awake, she said softly. That's what they tell me. She walked slowly into the room and stopped a few feet from his bed, like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. How are you feeling? Like I got shot. A ghost of a smile crossed her face, then disappeared. Marcus, She stopped, shook her head, started again. I don't know how to do this. I've given speeches to thousands of people. I've negotiated deals worth billions of dollars. But I don't know how to say what I need to say to you. Then just say it. She pulled the chair closer to his bed, the same chair Jalen had been sitting in, and sat down. For a long moment, she just looked at him, like she was trying to memorize his face. You took a bullet for my daughter. Again. After everything I did to you. After I got you fired and blacklisted and threatened and humiliated. After I treated you like a criminal for saving her life. You still came back. You still protected her. You still... Her voice cracked. You still threw yourself in front of a gun for a little girl whose mother tried to destroy you. I didn't do it for you. I know. That's what makes it worse. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I've spent my whole life building walls, protecting myself, making sure no one could ever hurt me or take anything from me. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to see people. I forgot how to trust. I looked at you and I saw a threat instead of a hero. I saw a stranger instead of a father. I saw... She stopped. You saw a black man in cheap clothes, Marcus said quietly, and you made assumptions. Yes, The word came out like a confession. Yes, and I was wrong. I was so wrong, Marcus. I've never been more wrong about anything in my life. The room was quiet except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Marcus watched Claire struggle with her emotions, watched the wall she'd built so carefully crumble in real time. Lily asks about you every day, she continued. She draws pictures of you. She tells everyone at school that her friend Marcus is a superhero. Claire's voice broke completely. She loves you. A 6-year-old girl who I've tried so hard to protect from everything. She loves a man I almost destroyed. Kids see things adults miss. She sees you clearly. She always did. Claire reached into her bag and pulled out the card Jalen had pointed to earlier, the one with the bright colors and the uneven letters. She wanted me to read this to you when you woke up. She unfolded the card and read, "Dear Mr. Marcus, thank you for saving me again. You are the bravest person in the whole world. I hope you feel better soon. When you do, will you come to my birthday party? Mommy says I can have ice cream cake. I love you. Your friend, Lily." Marcus felt something break open in his chest that had nothing to do with the bullet wound. "She drew a picture, too," Claire said, turning the card around. "That's you, and that's her, and that's—" She pointed to a smaller figure next to the Marcus drawing. "That's Jalen. She wants to meet him. She says you told her about him, and he sounds nice." Marcus couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. Claire set the card on his bedside table and took a deep breath. "Marcus, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, not after what I've done. But I need you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this right. Not because I want something from you, not because I'm trying to buy your forgiveness, but because you showed me who I really was, and I didn't like what I saw. People don't change overnight. No, they don't. But they can start." She met his eyes. "I want to offer you a job. Head of Corporate Security at Donovan Tech. Full benefits. Health insurance for you and Jalen. A salary that means you never have to worry about rent again." "You tried to buy me off before." "This isn't buying you off. This is me acknowledging that you're the best person for the job. You saw what Mark missed. You identified threats that my entire security team overlooked. You saved my daughter's life twice when the people I paid millions of dollars couldn't save her once." She leaned forward. "I'm not offering you charity, Marcus. I'm offering you the position you've earned." Marcus was quiet for a long time. He thought about the warehouse, the night shifts, the endless cycle of poverty that never quite let him get ahead. He thought about Jalen, who deserved better than clearance jeans and a father who came home exhausted every night. He thought about the look in his son's eyes when he talked about wanting to be a hero, and the fear that lived right next to it, the fear that being a hero meant getting hurt. "If I take this job," he said slowly, "things change. Really change. Not just for me. For everyone at your company who looks at people the way you looked at me." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you don't get to just hire me and pretend that makes everything okay. You have to do the work. Diversity training, fair hiring practices, a real commitment to seeing people for who they are, not what they look like. You have to stand up in front of your whole company and tell them what you did wrong and why it mattered." Claire didn't flinch. "I'll do it." "You'll tell 300 employees that you discriminated against a man who saved your daughter? I'll tell 3,000 if that's what it takes." Marcus studied her face, looking for the lie, the angle, the hidden agenda. He didn't find one. "I'll need time to think about it." "Take all the time you need. The offer stands." She rose from the chair and paused at the door. "Marcus?" "Yeah?" "Thank you. Not just for saving Lily. For showing me who I could be. if I was brave enough to change. She left before he could respond. The next 2 weeks were a blur of recovery and decisions. Marcus moved from the hospital to a rehabilitation facility, where physical therapists pushed him to rebuild the strength the bullet had stolen. Jalen visited every day after school, bringing homework and stories, and the kind of unconditional love that made everything else bearable. Claire visited too. Not every day, but often enough. She brought updates on the investigation. Meridian Holdings was being dismantled, its executives facing criminal charges for conspiracy to commit murder. She brought news about Rojas's trial. He was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence, and his testimony was bringing down everyone who'd paid him. And she brought Lily. The first time Lily visited the rehabilitation facility, she ran down the hallway and launched herself at Marcus's wheelchair before anyone could stop her. "Mr. Marcus, you're sitting up!" "Careful, baby," Claire called out, hurrying after her. "Remember what we talked about? He's still healing." I know. Gentle hugs." Lily wrapped her arms around Marcus's neck with exaggerated care, like she was handling something precious. "Is this gentle enough?" "Perfect," Marcus said, and meant it. Lily pulled back and studied his face with the intensity only a child could manage. "Does it still hurt?" "A little, but it's getting better." "Good, because I need you to come to my birthday party. It's in 3 weeks. Mommy said I could have a bounce house and a magician and ice cream cake. You have to be there." "I wouldn't miss it," Lily beamed. Then her expression turned serious. "Mr. Marcus, are you going to work with Mommy now?" Marcus glanced at Claire, who was standing a few feet away with a carefully neutral expression. "I'm thinking about it." "You should. Mommy needs someone to help her be brave. She told me she's not very good at it by herself, but you're good at being brave. You could teach her." Out of the mouths of babes. "I'll think about it," Marcus said again. Lily nodded, satisfied. "Okay, but think fast. Mommy says the job has health insurance, and that's important, because getting shot is expensive." Claire covered her face with her hand. "Lily, we talked about this. There are some things we don't say out loud." "But it's true. You said the hospital bill was more than a car." "That doesn't mean we share it with everyone." Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the first one in longer than he could remember. "She's not wrong." Claire dropped her hand, and there was something in her eyes that looked dangerously close to hope. "No, she's not." That night, after Lily and Claire had gone home, Marcus lay in his rehabilitation bed and thought about the future. He thought about the warehouse and the years he'd spent being invisible. He thought about Carl, who'd watched him from the office window like he was waiting for him to fail. He thought about all the jobs he'd worked since leaving the Marines, the security gigs, the delivery routes, the factory floors, and how none of them had ever seen what he could really do. He thought about Claire's offer, the salary, the benefits, the chance to build something instead of just surviving. And he thought about Jalen, about the look in his son's eyes when he talked about wanting to be a hero, about what it would mean for Jalen to see his father walk into a building where people respected him, listened to him, treated him like he mattered. The next morning, he called Claire. "I'm in." The pause on the other end of the line was barely a heartbeat. "You're sure?" "I'm sure, but my conditions stand. Real change, not just window dressing." "I already started." Her voice was steady, confident. "I've scheduled a company-wide meeting for next week. I'm going to tell them everything. What I did, how I was wrong, what we're going to do differently. And I've engaged a consulting firm that specializes in equity and inclusion. They'll be working with us for the next year, minimum." "That's a start." "It's more than a start. It's a commitment." Another pause. "Marcus, thank you for giving me a chance to make this right." "Don't thank me yet. I'm going to hold you to every word. I'm counting on it. 3 weeks later, Marcus Thompson walked into the lobby of Donovan Tech for the first time as an employee. The receptionist smiled when she saw him. Not the forced, polite smile she'd given him the first time, when he'd stood there in his flannel shirt, feeling like a stain on the carpet. A real smile. Warm. Genuine. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Miss Donovan is expecting you in the main conference room." "Thank you." He walked through the corridors he'd mapped during those desperate days before the gala. But everything felt different now. Employees nodded as he passed. Some stopped to shake his hand. A few had clearly been waiting for him. They came out of offices and cubicles to introduce themselves, to thank him, to welcome him to the team. "You're the one who saved Lily," a young woman said, her eyes bright. "My sister was at the gala. She said she's never seen anyone move that fast in her life." "Just did what needed to be done," Marcus said. That's what heroes always say. The conference room was packed. Not just executives and managers, everyone. 300 employees, maybe more, crowded into a space designed for 50. They stood along the walls, sat on the floor, spilled out into the hallway, and at the front of the room, Claire Donovan stood behind a podium with no notes, no teleprompter, nothing to hide behind. She saw Marcus enter and gave him a small nod. Then she turned to face her company. "Thank you all for being here. I know this is unusual. I know you're wondering why I've pulled everyone away from their work on a Wednesday morning. The reason is simple. I have something to say, and I need all of you to hear it." The room went quiet. 2 months ago, a man saved my daughter's life at Riverside Mall. He took a bullet meant for her, a bullet that could have killed him. And when he was bleeding on the floor of that mall, do you know what I did? I looked at him with suspicion. I looked at his worn clothes, and his calloused hands, and his black skin, and I decided he was a threat. A murmur ran through the crowd. I had him investigated. I got him fired from his job. I blacklisted him across the city. I sent lawyers to intimidate him. I did everything in my power to destroy a man whose only crime was saving my daughter's life. Claire's voice was steady, but Marcus could see her hands shaking. And when I finally realized how wrong I was, when I finally asked him for help protecting Lily from a real threat, do you know what he did? He said yes. He came back. He put himself between a bullet and my child for the second time, even though I had treated him like a criminal for doing it the first time. Silence. Absolute silence. I am telling you this because you deserve to know what kind of person has been leading this company, and because I need you to hold me accountable as I try to become better. I looked at Marcus Thompson, and I saw what I was taught to see, what society conditioned me to see. I saw his appearance and his circumstances, and I made assumptions that almost got my daughter killed and almost destroyed an innocent man's life. She stepped out from behind the podium and gestured toward Marcus. This is Marcus Thompson. He's not a criminal. He's not a threat. He's a hero. A 14-year Marine Corps veteran. A devoted father. And starting today, the head of corporate security for Donovan Tech. The applause started somewhere in the back of the room and spread forward like a wave. People stood. They clapped. They cheered, and when Marcus walked to the front of the room to stand beside Claire, they didn't stop. For a man who had spent his life being invisible, it was almost too much to bear. "Thank you," he said, when the applause finally died down. "I'm not much for speeches, so I'll just say this. I didn't do what I did for recognition. I did it because it was right. And I'm here now because Miss Donovan convinced me that she wants to make Donovan Tech a place where doing right matters, where people are judged by their character, not their appearance, where everyone gets a fair chance, no matter where they come from." He looked out at the sea of faces, young and old, black and white, men and women, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. "I'm going to hold her to that promise," he continued, "and I'm asking all of you to help me. Because real change doesn't come from the top down. It comes from all of us, every day, in the choices we make about how we treat each other." Miss Donovan made a mistake. She admitted it. She's trying to fix it. That takes courage. But it also takes a community willing to support that change and call it out when we fall short. He paused, then added, "I've been the guy people overlook. I've been the guy people assume the worst about. I know what it feels like to be invisible. And I can tell you, nobody should have to feel that way. Not here. Not anywhere." The silence that followed was different from before. It was thoughtful, reflective. The kind of silence that happens when people are genuinely listening. Then Claire spoke again. "Thank you, Marcus. And thank all of you for hearing us out. There's work to be done. Let's get started." The meeting broke up slowly, with clusters of employees lingering to talk, to process, to begin the difficult conversations that real change requires. Marcus shook hands until his arm ached. He answered questions until his voice was hoarse. And when the room finally emptied, he stood alone with Claire in the aftermath. "You did good," he said. "I did what I should have done from the beginning." "Yeah, but you still did it. That counts for something." Claire smiled, a real smile, tired but genuine. "Lily's birthday party is Saturday. She's been asking about you every day, and she wants to know if Jalen can come." Marcus felt the last of his resistance crumble. "I think he'd like that." "Good, because she's already made him a friendship bracelet." "She made me one too," Marcus admitted. "I'm wearing it under my suit." Claire laughed, and the sound echoed through the empty conference room like the beginning of something new. Lily's birthday party was everything a 6-year-old could dream of, and more. The bounce house dominated the backyard of Claire's estate, a massive inflatable castle that had Jalen's eyes going wide the moment they pulled through the gates. There was a magician who made rabbits appear from hats and doves fly from empty boxes. There were balloons everywhere, pink and purple and gold, and a table stacked with presents wrapped in glittering paper. And in the center of it all, an ice cream cake so tall it needed 2 people to carry it. Marcus stood near the edge of the party, watching Jalen and Lily chase each other across the lawn with a group of kids who'd already forgotten they were strangers an hour ago. His son was laughing, really laughing, the kind of pure, unguarded joy that Marcus hadn't seen in longer than he wanted to admit. "They're good together." He turned to find Claire beside him, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. She offered him one. "Yeah," he said, taking the glass. "They are." "Lily's been talking about Jalen all week. She told everyone at school that her new best friend's dad is a superhero." Marcus shook his head. "I wish you'd stop calling me that." "Why? It's true." "It's not. I'm just a guy who did what needed to be done." Claire was quiet for a moment, watching the children play. Then she said, "You know what I've learned about heroes? Real ones, not the ones in movies. They never think they are. They just see something wrong and they fix it. They don't wait for permission or recognition. They don't calculate the cost. They just act." That sounds like something from a self-help book. It's something I learned from watching you. Before Marcus could respond, Lily came running over, her face flushed with excitement. "Mr. Marcus! Mr. Marcus! Come see the bounce house! Jalen says you're too big to bounce, but I said you're not, because superheroes can do anything." Marcus glanced at Claire, who was trying very hard not to laugh. "I'm being summoned," he said. "So I see. Try not to break anything." He let Lily drag him across the lawn to where Jalen was waiting by the bounce house entrance. His son's expression was skeptical. "Dad, you can't seriously be thinking about going in there. Your new friend says superheroes can do anything. You have 2 cracked ribs that are still healing." "They're mostly healed." "Dad." "Jalen." They stared at each other for a moment, father and son, locked in a battle of wills that both of them knew Marcus was going to win. "Fine," Jalen said finally. "But if you hurt yourself, I'm telling the doctors you were showing off for a 6-year-old. Marcus grinned and climbed into the bounce house. It was, without question, the most undignified thing he'd done in years. He bounced awkwardly, his chest protesting with every jump, while Lily and Jalen and a half-dozen other kids laughed and shrieked and did backflips around him like he was an obstacle course. At some point, he lost his balance and went down hard, and 3 children immediately piled on top of him in what they called a superhero dog pile. When he finally extracted himself and climbed out, breathless and sore and grinning like an idiot, Claire was waiting with her phone in her hand. "I got pictures." "You didn't." "I absolutely did. This is going in the company newsletter." Claire, the head of corporate security, defeated by a bounce house. Morale will be through the roof. Marcus laughed despite himself. It felt strange, being somewhere he belonged, with people who wanted him there, doing something that had nothing to do with survival or struggle. It felt almost dangerous, like happiness was something that could be taken away if he held it too tightly. But he held it anyway. As the party wound down and the other children left with their parents, Jalen and Lily sat on the back porch steps, sharing the last slices of ice cream cake. Marcus watched them from inside, where Claire was directing the catering staff through the cleanup. "He's a good kid," she said, following his gaze. "He's the best thing I ever did." "How old was he when his mother left?" Marcus tensed. It wasn't a subject he talked about, ever, with anyone. But something about the day, about the way Claire had opened herself up to him over the past weeks, made him want to answer. 3. She couldn't handle it. The bills, the stress, the way I came back from my last deployment, different than when I left. She said I was a ghost, that I was there, but not really there. One morning I woke up and she was gone. Left a note saying she was sorry, that she needed to find herself, that Jalen would be better off with me. He paused. I haven't heard from her since. Claire was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Best thing she ever did for him was leave. Kids know when a parent doesn't want to be there. Growing up with that, with someone who resents you for existing, that's worse than growing up with just one parent who loves you. You've done an amazing job with him. He's kind. He's thoughtful. He's brave. He gets that from himself. I just try not to mess it up." Claire smiled. "That's what all good parents say." Outside, Lily was showing Jalen something on her tablet. Their heads were bent together. 2 kids from completely different worlds, finding common ground over whatever game or video had captured their attention. It was such a simple thing, such an ordinary moment, but Marcus felt it resonate somewhere deep in his chest. This was what he'd fought for. Not glory, not recognition. This. A moment of peace. A glimpse of what life could be when people stopped building walls and started building bridges. "Claire," he said, "I want to propose something. For the company." She turned to face him fully. "I'm listening." "When I got out of the Marines, I didn't know how to be a civilian. Didn't know how to translate what I could do into something that mattered in the real world. I spent years bouncing from job to job, watching guys I served with struggle even worse than me. Some of them didn't make it. Suicide, addiction, homelessness. The numbers are staggering. And it's not because they're broken. It's because nobody gives them a chance to prove they're not. What are you proposing? A veterans hiring program. Donovan Tech specifically reaching out to former service members, giving them opportunities to use their skills instead of wasting them. Training programs, mentorship, a real pathway into careers that matter. Claire considered this for a moment. That would be a significant investment. It would be a significant return. You want security professionals who've worked under pressure? Hire veterans. You want IT specialists who can solve problems under impossible deadlines? Hire veterans. You want employees who understand loyalty, teamwork, sacrifice? Veterans. Every single time. You've thought about this. I've lived it. I know what it's like to have skills nobody values because they don't fit neatly into a civilian checkbox. I know what it's like to apply for jobs you're overqualified for and get rejected because your resume has too many gaps or too much combat experience. These are good people, Claire. They just need someone to see them. Claire was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Write me a proposal. Full plan, budget, timeline, metrics for success. Have it on my desk by Friday, and we'll present it to the board next month." Just like that? Just like that. She met his eyes. You showed me what happens when you overlook people. I'm not making that mistake again. The veterans hiring program launched 3 months later. Marcus had worked on the proposal every night for a week, drawing on everything he knew about military transition, civilian employment, and the unique challenges veterans faced. He'd called old friends from the Marines, asked them what would have made a difference when they got out, incorporated their feedback into a plan that was comprehensive, practical, and deeply personal. The board approved it unanimously. James was the first hire. He came on as Assistant Director of Security, bringing his network of former military contacts with him. Within 6 months, they had 47 veterans working at Donovan Tech, in security, IT, logistics, facilities management. Every single one of them had been struggling before. Every single one of them thrived once they were given a chance. The news picked up the story. Tech giant launches revolutionary veterans program, the headlines read. Donovan Tech CEO credits former warehouse worker with inspiration. Marcus did interviews he didn't want to do, stood for photos he didn't want to take, and sat through meetings with other companies who wanted to replicate the program. You're famous now, Jalen said one evening, scrolling through his phone at the dinner table. There's like 1,000 articles about you online. Fame's not what I wanted. What did you want? Marcus thought about it. I wanted people like me to have a chance. I wanted someone to look at a guy with calloused hands and worn jeans and see what he could do, not what he looked like. Is that happening? Starting to, slowly. But yeah, it's happening. Jalen set his phone down and looked at his father with an expression that was part admiration, part something deeper that Marcus couldn't quite name. I'm proud of you, Dad. The words hit Marcus harder than any bullet ever had. I'm proud of you too, buddy. Every single day. 1 year to the day after the mall shooting, Marcus received an invitation he never expected. It was hand-delivered to his office at Donovan Tech, a thick envelope with a seal of the city on the front. Inside was a letter informing him that he'd been selected to receive the Mayor's Award for Community Heroism, to be presented at a ceremony the following month. He tried to decline. Claire wouldn't let him. You don't get to hide from this one, she said. You've earned it. I didn't do it for awards. I know. That's exactly why you're getting one. The ceremony was held at City Hall, in a chamber filled with dignitaries and press, and what felt like every person Marcus had ever met. James was there with his wife. Mrs. Patterson was there with Jalen. Claire was there with Lily, who wore a blue dress that matched the one she'd worn to her birthday party and who kept waving at Marcus from the front row like she was trying to signal a plane. When they called his name, Marcus walked to the podium on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The mayor shook his hand, said words about heroism and sacrifice and community that Marcus barely heard. Then she handed him a medal and gestured for him to speak. He looked out at the crowd, at the faces he knew and the ones he didn't, at the cameras recording everything for the evening news, at Jalen, sitting in the front row with tears streaming down his face and the biggest smile Marcus had ever seen. "I'm not good at speeches," he began, "so I'll keep this short." He took a breath. "A year ago, I was nobody. I worked nights at a warehouse, barely made enough to keep the lights on, and spent most of my time trying to be invisible. That's what life teaches you when you're black and broke in America. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Don't expect anyone to see you as anything other than what they assume you are." The room was silent. Then, one day, a gunshot changed everything. I didn't think about what I was doing. I just saw a little girl in danger, and I moved. Got shot for it. And when it was over, the girl's mother, one of the most powerful women in this city, looked at me like I was the threat instead of the hero. He glanced at Claire, who was watching him with tears in her eyes. She was wrong. She knows she was wrong. And to her credit, she admitted it. She stood in front of her entire company and said, "I made a mistake. I judged a man by his appearance instead of his actions, and I'm going to do better." That takes courage. That takes humility. That takes the kind of strength most people never show. He looked back at the crowd. But here's the thing. Claire Donovan isn't special. She's not some rare exception. She's normal. She did what most people do, what society trains us all to do. She saw someone who didn't fit her picture of what a hero looks like, and she made assumptions. We all do it, every day. We look at people and we decide who they are based on how they dress, where they live, what color their skin is. And we're wrong. We're almost always wrong. He held up the medal. "This isn't for me. This is for every veteran who came home from war and couldn't find a job. This is for every single parent working 2 shifts just to keep their kids fed. This is for every person who's ever been looked at and dismissed, overlooked and undervalued, treated like they're less than because they don't fit somebody else's definition of worthy. You're not less. You never were. And if nobody else tells you that today, then let me be the one." He paused, letting the words settle. "I didn't become a hero by getting shot. I was a hero before that. Every time I showed up for my son. Every time I did the right thing when nobody was watching. Every time I refused to let the world convince me I was worthless. And so are you. Every single one of you. Heroes aren't made by medals or ceremonies or news coverage. They're made by choices. Small ones. Daily ones. The choice to help someone who needs it. The choice to speak up when it's easier to stay quiet. The choice to be better today than you were yesterday." He looked at Jalen one more time. "My son asked me once why I keep putting myself in danger to help people who don't always appreciate it. I told him it's because being good isn't about what you get back. It's about who you are. It's about looking in the mirror and being able to live with the person looking back at you. I want him to grow up in a world where doing the right thing doesn't cost you everything. And the only way to build that world is to act like it already exists. To be the kind of person you wish everyone else would be." He stepped back from the podium. "Thank you for this honor. But the real honor is getting to wake up every day and try to make a difference. That's something all of us can do, medal or no medal." The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, Marcus stood in the lobby of City Hall, shaking hands and accepting congratulations from people whose names he wouldn't remember in an hour. He was exhausted, overwhelmed, and desperately ready to go home and collapse on his couch. But there was one more thing he had to do. He found Claire standing near the exit, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "That was quite a speech," she said. "Wasn't sure I could pull it off." "You pulled it off." She paused. "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you. I've been trying to find the right moment, but I'm not sure there is one, so I'm just going to say it." His heart rate spiked. "Okay." "I've spent the last year watching you. How you work, how you lead, how you treat people. And I've realized something." She took a breath. "You're not just the best security director I've ever had. You're the best person I've ever known. You make me want to be better. You make everyone around you want to be better. And I—" She stopped, shook her head. "I'm doing this badly. I rehearsed this in my head 100 times and it sounded much better there." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "Claire, I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss, and there are 1,000 reasons why this is probably a terrible idea. But I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what we could be if we were brave enough to try." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the night they'd met. Not as the CEO who'd tried to destroy him. Not as Lily's mother. Not as a symbol of everything that had gone wrong and then right in his life. Just as a woman, standing in front of him, telling him something that took more courage than she probably realized. "You're right," he said slowly. "There are 1,000 reasons why this is probably a terrible idea." Her face fell slightly. "But I've spent my whole life being careful, playing it safe, staying invisible so nobody could hurt me. And you know what it got me? A 2-bedroom apartment I could barely afford, and a life that felt like waiting for something that never came." He stepped closer. "I'm tired of being careful, Claire. I'm tired of playing it safe, and I'm especially tired of walking away from good things because I'm scared they might hurt." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, let's find out what we could be." She smiled, a real smile, unguarded and luminous, and Marcus felt the last of his walls come tumbling down. 2 years later, Marcus Thompson stood in the lobby of Donovan Tech, watching a young veteran named Derek Washington walk in for his first day of work. Derek was 24, a former Army corporal who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before coming home to a country that didn't know what to do with him. He'd been homeless for 3 months before one of the program's outreach workers found him at a shelter and told him about the opportunity at Donovan Tech. "Mr. Thompson?" Derek's voice was nervous, uncertain. "They told me to find you when I got here." "Call me Marcus." He extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Derek." "I can't believe I'm here. I mean, I've read about this place, about the program, but I never thought—" He stopped, shook his head. "Sorry, I'm rambling." "Don't apologize. I know exactly how you feel." He showed Derek around the building, the same hallways Marcus had walked in his flannel shirt all those years ago, now filled with employees who greeted him by name, who stopped to chat about their weekends and their families and their lives. The Veterans Program had expanded to 6 other companies. The diversity initiatives Claire had started were being studied by business schools. And Donovan Tech itself had been transformed into a place where people were valued for who they were, not what they looked like. At the end of the tour, Marcus brought Derek to his office and sat him down. "I want to tell you something," Marcus said. "Something I wish someone had told me when I got out." "Okay?" "You're going to feel like you don't belong here. Like everyone's watching you, waiting for you to fail. Like you're a fraud who somehow slipped through the cracks, and any minute now they're going to figure it out and send you back to wherever you came from." He leaned forward. That feeling is a lie. You belong here. You earned this. And every day you show up and do your best, you prove that lie wrong. Derek's eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "How do you know?" he asked. "How do you know it gets better?" Marcus smiled. "Because I'm living proof. 3 years ago, I was where you are, struggling, invisible, convinced the world would never see me as anything more than a problem to be managed. And now I'm here, running security for one of the biggest tech companies in the region, married to a woman who challenges me to be better every day, raising a son who makes me prouder than I ever thought possible." He paused. "It gets better, Derek. Not overnight, not without work. But if you keep showing up, if you keep being the person you know you can be, doors open. People see you, opportunities appear, and one day you look back and realize that all those years of struggle were just preparation for the life you were always meant to live." Derek nodded slowly. "Thank you, sir. Marcus. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove me right." That evening, Marcus drove home to the house he shared with Claire and Lily and Jalen. A real house now, with a backyard and a 2-car garage and enough bedrooms that nobody had to share. Jalen was in the living room doing homework when he walked in. Lily was at the kitchen table, drawing pictures of their family for a school project. And Claire was at the stove, making dinner and listening to something on her phone that made her laugh. "Dad!" Jalen looked up. "Mom said to tell you that the foundation approved the new shelter project." Mom. It had taken Jalen almost a year to start calling Claire that. But when he finally did, Marcus had cried for the first time since the hospital. "That's great news," Marcus said, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. The same bowl he'd had in the old apartment, now in a house that actually felt like home. "And Lily wants to show you something." Lily came running in from the kitchen, waving her drawing. "Look, Mr. Marcus, I drew all of us." It was a simple picture. 4 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. 2 tall ones and 2 small ones. A family. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. The teacher asked me to draw the people I love most in the whole world, so I drew you and Mommy and Jalen and me." She pointed to the tallest stick figure, the one on the end. "That's you, see? I gave you a cape because you're still a superhero even though you don't fight bad guys anymore." Marcus crouched down to her level and pulled her into a hug. "I'll always be your superhero, Lily. Always." Claire appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel, watching them with an expression that made Marcus's heart ache in the best possible way. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. "Jalen, clear the table. Lily, go wash your hands. Marcus." She walked over and kissed him softly. "Welcome home." Later that night, after the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, Marcus stood on the back porch, looking up at the stars. Claire came out to join him, sliding her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. Nothing. How different my life is from what I expected." "Good different or bad different?" "Good. Definitely good." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever think about how we met? About everything that had to go wrong for everything to go right?" "Sometimes. I think about what would have happened if you hadn't been at the mall that day. If Lily had—" She stopped, unable to finish the thought. "But I was there, and she's okay, and so are we. Because of you. Because of us, all of us. Because people can change. Because the world can be different if we're brave enough to make it different." Claire leaned her head against his shoulder. "You really believe that?" "I have to, because the alternative is giving up, and I've never been very good at that." They stood there together, looking up at the same stars that had watched over Marcus during all those nights in Afghanistan, all those nights in the warehouse, all those nights in the tiny apartment where he'd wondered if things would ever get better. They had gotten better. Not because the world had changed, but because he had refused to let it define him. He'd been invisible, and he'd made himself seen. He'd been dismissed, and he'd proven himself invaluable. He'd been treated like a threat, and he'd responded with heroism that couldn't be denied. The road from the mall to this moment had been long and painful and full of obstacles he'd never expected. But standing here now, with his family sleeping inside the house behind him, and the woman he loved beside him, Marcus Thompson knew that every step had been worth it. He'd taken a bullet for a stranger's child, and discovered that sometimes our greatest enemies help us discover our true strength. He'd been judged and dismissed and underestimated, and he'd learned that the people who doubt us are often the ones who give us the chance to prove them wrong. He'd rebuilt his life from nothing, and he discovered that true justice doesn't just stop the bad, it rebuilds the good that others fail to see. Some people wait their whole lives for a moment that changes everything. Marcus had gotten his on a Saturday afternoon in the shopping mall, when a gunshot shattered the ordinary and gave him a chance to show the world who he really was. He hadn't asked for it, he hadn't wanted it, but he'd risen to meet it anyway, because that's what heroes do. Not the heroes in movies, with their capes and their powers and their guaranteed happy endings. Real heroes. The ones who get up every day and choose to be good, even when it costs them. The ones who protect children they've never met and stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. The ones who look at a broken world and decide to fix it, one choice at a time. Marcus Thompson had been invisible his whole life. Now, finally, he was seen. And that made all the difference.